Okay, the defensive fire phase, the coalition after the 10 o'clock turn. We have completed movement. See, here the Austrians have attempted to close in on Austerlitz a little bit. In all likelihood, they're not going to be able to crack this this nut. They did their best in spite of a poor command decision by me. But we will resolve defensive and offensive fire here for Austerlitz. Then we'll move the Solkonitz to both phases and so on, just to keep things moving. So we have the 108th firing on first to the 14th. Well, the 53, but he is in the town hex, so that won't have any effect. Fire there, and just keep going. See if we get any dice. Not so far. Now, that light battalion is currently being charged by those lancers underneath that marker. Even though he technically has that Renzer in his front, I kind of play that they're too busy fighting off that cavalry to be shooting at skirmishers in front of them. So they're locked in a charge and they will not fire. So we will go ahead and do offensive fire just to keep things moving. Dice. Let's see, that is 3 increments against a bunch of low dice. I think we might have a shot here. Got 4 increments of the skirmishers against general order in the vineyard, and yes, that is a hit, which is, oops, get back in your position, Friant, you're going down. That is really rough because that's yet another casualty, and that's 7 total out of 8, which makes that battalion basically dog food. So, oh, I forgot one shot here. Those cavalry horse guns firing, and nothing. I guess I can fire those guns at that cavalry over there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's a 1. Not even worth the bother. So, 1 loss in desultory firefights, but still pretty important casualty on the French there. So we're going to go ahead and move towards Solkonitz, and we'll look and see how the Doktrov's corps closed quickly. They have left their hit big guns, moved up their artillery. Largely, they're going to go in with just infantry. So we will have a few shots here. Got these skirmishers, and we have that infantry battalion there opposing the Russians. So my last die roll was 3 increments of light infantry and skirmish order against that musketeer battalion in line. 1 to 1. We rolled a 56. That's a hit, and they suffer an increment. We'll go ahead and now conduct offensive fire. So we have grenadiers and musketeers lined up against that battalion there. So 4 increments, and the 4 is going to be a fire factor of 20 against a defense factor of 10, odds of 2 to 1, and that results in a increment loss, a roll of 35. Here we have this artillery, nothing really to shoot at for them. The skirmishers, nothing. So now we have 2 battalions in column. Musketeers in column are poor. 3 each. So they can muster a 6, which is very poor odds, no effect. Doesn't really matter because they're not there to shoot anybody. They're there to charge with their fixed bayonets. So we'll fire these 2. And they 3, 4, 5, 10. That's a 1 to 1.5. That actually is a increment loss. You rolled a 56. So those French skirmishers take a small loss. That would conclude our offensive fire here in the south. We will move and look at the 3rd column here. You can see similarly they have closed with the French. The idea being to try to do as much damage as possible, as quickly as possible. Time is not on their side. So the French have a few defensive fire here. 55th Regiment, 36th there. But they're firing at general order troops in the pines there, so they're going to have a hard time. Let's see. Yeah, 3 shots, no effect. Over here, we're going to be in much the similar circumstance. Now, these light troops in column have a fire factor of 8 against column. That's a 1 to 1. No luck. Another shot here. No luck. And then we can take these as a front hex side. So that's about 1 to 1. No hits. So just keeping the focus on the 3rd column here. No, excuse me, that's the 2nd column. That's Langeron's men. We will go ahead and do their offensive fire. We have the Gursky here, 2 increments, plus those musketeers firing. That's a big number. Roll a 65. So that is an increment loss. That is a 2nd loss. So they will perform a morale check with a morale of 26. And they hold their ground. Do a couple more fires here. Well, had a nice roll, 55, but I don't even have to look at it. I know that those musketeers have such poor fire. They couldn't have possibly gotten a hit. Very low roll there. No real target for the light battery. We do have, we can muster those 2 battalions. And we have likely missed as well. Yep. Well, I better check just to make sure. No, fire factors of 3 against the general order. 1 more shot there. No effect. Now that musketeer battalion did cause a loss on the French 1st Battalion of the 43rd. So those 2 fires. Inflicted 1 casualty. That'll play well come the melee phase, I think. So we'll move 1 step further north This is the third column. And again, the third column is tried to close. Basically all along the line we're trying to get the Russians up and fighting before they run out of time. So the French have a couple of shots, but largely they are outnumbered at the point of attack here. So we'll fire that skirmish against that Egerseki, and that is a 66, nice boxcars. That's a hit. They have to contract into 1 hex because they can't be in 2 any longer, and they have to check morale. 33, and they roll a 26, which is a disorder. So they will retreat 3 hexes and become disordered. So that's what the French want to see. Beat back the Russians. That is a 7 against a 9. That's a 1 to 1.5, so no losses there. The French have a nice big 8 increment battalion sitting there, so he can bring 1 to 1 attacks on both those. And he scores no hits. We have 1 last fire attack there. Nothing. So now we'll just go to the offensive fire phase. And we have that nice light battery that's got himself on the flank, and he's going to do some damage. We will fire these skirmishers. So that's going to be a total fire of 30 in the flank. Ooh. Yikes. That works out to 5 to 1 odds. We rolled a 61. 2 losses in 1 shot. That's what the Russian guns do for you. So they happen to have outstanding morale. 16. And they do manage to hold. We will fire these Russians even though they're very poorly armed. Or at least very ineffective. No losses. We'll fire once here. No losses. And I believe we can fire that light battery at those skirmishers. That is a 2 to 1 attack, 24 against the 12. And they inflict casualties. And just to take stock of where we are, we can see Kolarath's men are starting to take position on the heights with the lifeguard and the command team behind them. It's getting kind of touch and go here in the north. We see a few points of contact. We won't spend too much time on this because it has the smallest possibility of casualties. But luckily we do strike them. That's a morale check, which they pass quite easily. Helped along by their fearless second command, or aide-de-camp to the Lan. I'm just going to go as fast as I can. Kind of roll offensive, defensive at the same time because that caused a hit on the first of the 34th, and they rolled one more on him. Everybody wins. there's one more shot between some skirmishers. The last shot we're going to make out of that artillery firing on those skirmishers in the distance, and bang, big blast from those big guns, and a disorder to boot. Collapse into one hex and retreat. That finishes our fire faces. There are kind of collapsed there just to keep things moving, but now we're going to look at possible points from melee. In the north here, unless Bagration has an absolute killer position, he's generally not going to melee. He's going to just try to keep his position and fall back as he can. Here in the center, we have some opportunities, and we will take those up shortly.